In 1849, a British archaeologist discovered 14 tablets in Sumeria. To date, these are the oldest known writings, and they date back to the 24th century BC. While the stories on them share much of what other ancient writings say, they put a whole new spin on the other ancient sacred texts. You see, while they do refer to a father of all beginnings, or some kind of ultimate supreme being, the tablets say that the creators in Genesis, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, these were polytheistic gods of ours, otherworldly beings, or just plain out, they were aliens. The entire first 2 tablets explain who they were and where they were from. Tablet 3 tells of the 6 days of creation, or settlement, on Earth. Later, they explain how the human race was genetically manipulated by these beings and did not evolve randomly. Even the technology Sumerians gave us came from these beings. According to the Sumerian tablets, 445,000 years ago, creator gods, as they call it, came to Earth. The only inhabitants of Earth were wild and undomesticated animals, and early ancestors of man. These beings were called the Anunnaki, which means those who from heaven to earth came. The Anunnaki inhabited a distant orbiting planet called Nibiru, which only entered our solar system every 3,600 years. They describe Nibiru as many times the diameter of Earth and abundant with iron oxide, making its rivers and lakes appear red. Now, a side note about Nibiru. According to the tablets, Nibiru's atmosphere began to deteriorate and become a hostile place for life, and in order to restore it, the Anunnaki needed one important element for their atmosphere: gold. Now, when the Anunnaki arrived, they were capable of living lives that spanned hundreds of thousands of years. They created a mining settlement they called Eridug, Earth Station 1, in the Persian Gulf, under a leader named Enki. The tablets convey, after a kingship descended from heaven, it was in Eridug. These visitors were not alone. They brought another extraterrestrial race with them. They were called the Igigi, and they worked as their slaves. The Igigi were considered inferior. They served the Anunnaki by mining gold. As civilizations grew, the Igigi endured crushing labor. And these stories are consistent with Babylonian tablets from the 18th century BC. When the gods, manlike, bore the labor, carried the load, the gods' load was great, the toil grievous, the trouble excessive. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi undertake the toil. After many centuries, the Igigi rebelled, mistakenly believing they could overcome these oppressive masters. Their defeat almost completely annihilated their race, leaving the Anunnaki without a workforce. Unable to replace the Igigi, Nibiru's ruler, Anu, ordered his son Enki to genetically engineer a new slave race, one that was intelligent enough to perform complex work but still be subservient to the Anunnaki. His experiments are recounted in detail in Atrahasis. Many unique creatures were created. Enki finally successfully met his goal, and the result? A genetic hybrid between Earth's caveman, Homo erectus, and the Anunnaki themselves. This hybrid we call Homo sapiens. The tablets called first men the Adamu. In Hebrew, Adam means man. The Anunnaki put the Homo sapiens to work in the mines and elsewhere in Mesopotamia. The Semitic word avad, or worship, literally means work for. Hence, early men had no choice but to worship their gods. According to the pictographs and texts, these Anunnaki, who we know lived many centuries, were giants compared to the Homo sapiens. Now, because their main purpose in life was to serve the Anunnaki, Homo sapiens were, in return, educated with social skills and academic affairs and technology. All this is abundantly clear in the tablets. The new human slaves were sterile, but as the demand for workforce increased, they were re-engineered so that they could reproduce. This later led to an overpopulation. So later, many humans were banished from the safety of their cities, giving rise to the story of the Garden of Eden and the story of banishment from paradise for procreating.